Your Excellencies, ambassadors of member states of the Organization of Southern Cooperation, Your Excellencies, ambassadors of non-member states of the organization, Your Excellency and dear brother, AU Commissioner for SD, ladies and gentlemen, having noticed the unfortunate reality that under this tent, the heat is particularly felt, in which, of course, generates a certain level of compassion that is relatively rare with hard-boiled eggs, I will seek, despite the reputation that I have gained since arriving in Addis as an interminable speaker, I will seek to be as concise as possible, adopting the Henry VIII school of public speaking. That is, I say unto you, as Henry VIII of England probably said to his 6 wives, I shall not keep you long. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me first and foremost to express to you my gratitude and appreciation for your presence today, for accompanying us on this very special occasion, an occasion which seeks to celebrate OSC Day as proclaimed by our General Assembly in 2021 to commemorate the entry into force of our Constitutive Charter on the 18th of May, 2021, with the mission of dedicating this day to making known to the peoples of the world the aims and achievements of the Organization of Southern Cooperation and gain their support and proactive involvement in the work of the organization. And of course, 1 year ago to the day tomorrow, many of us had convened here to inaugurate this building as the provisional headquarters graciously provided by our host country, the government of Ethiopia, that I would like to acknowledge here today. And of course, since then, in the year that has passed, our organization, this collective, this family of nations that is the OSC, has made extraordinary strides. From a handful of Secretariat members in January 2023 to over 160 staff members of this Secretariat present on these premises. Having activated its General Assembly and governing bodies with the election of President Ghazali Uthmani of Comoros as President of the General Assembly, and on whose behalf, of course, I extend as well warm wishes to all of you on this day. The organization has consolidated its structures. But an organization like the OSC was not created for the sake of having a secretariat, and was not created for the sake of having governing bodies. These are, ladies and gentlemen, means to an end, means to a vision, as articulated in our Constitutive Charter, for a third way of development, from and by the South, for humanity. And of course, in the year since we last met here, the most important aspect, I believe, is that the Organization of Southern Cooperation, under mandate of its member states, has made great strides in the execution of their common program to contribute to our development goals. Of course, the list would be too long to enumerate here, given my promise of being short. But amongst those, in November 2023, the historic decision of the Ministers of Finance of the organization to create the Common Leveraging Union of Borrowers, the club, as the world's first union of sovereign borrowers, of sovereign debtors, to bridge the financing gap that our countries of the South face in addressing and in investing in 6 strategic sectors. Balanced and inclusive education systems. As my brother from the AU Commission will testify, no development without education. But also integral health systems, where we must invest in preventative care as much as curative medicine. The club also directs its financing by decision of the member states towards sustainable agriculture. And through that, hopefully, food sovereignty, renewable energies, and through that, energy sovereignty, infrastructure development. Because there is no South-South cooperation, ladies and gentlemen, if it is not possible to ensure swift connectivity between our countries. To concretize what I am saying at the risk of confirming my hard-gained reputation as an interminable speaker, I recently came back from Suriname in South America, where I attended the Ministerial Council meeting of the Association of Caribbean States. And of course, I had to attend meetings in Kenya yesterday. But in all, and what would normally have taken me 12 hours at most, ended up taking me 27. Because I had to fly, that was the only option, from South America to Amsterdam, which is not even in the right direction, to get back to the South. And therefore, as countries, we must invest in the connectivity between our countries, both regionally, but also between the South. Because that is what ensures that cooperation is possible. And the OSCE, of course, works with its member states in this regard. And finally, endogenous technology and high-value added industrialization. Because our countries must move from net exporters of raw intermediary materials and importers of high-value added products to net producers of high-value added products. But of course, beyond the club, ladies and gentlemen, on the 29th of January this year, we inaugurated the OSCE Institute, which unfortunately you cannot see because of the setup. But the OSCE Institute, which has started its activities in April, building the capacities of member states in balanced and inclusive education, so that they may go back, those experts that are accompanying us today, to their home ministries, in order for them to lead the educational transformation to which we aspire. GRESIS was also launched in February, the Greater South Information System, providing a digital platform to all member states that grants free of charge institutional access to a platform that contains comprehensive resources, academic articles, journals, endogenous knowledge repositories, granting access to the universities and student faculty of our member states, granting them access to this platform to address the challenge of access to knowledge, but also the challenge of making research done in our countries of the South more visible, and hence facilitating collaboration amongst researchers of our continents that, yes, have very different contexts, but share some systemic challenges, making our exchanges necessary. And of course, in February as well, the signing of an agreement with the Republic of the Gambia to establish a regional intergovernmental center of transdisciplinary research for West Africa, to reinforce our research capacities as countries, but also our scientific production capabilities. More recently, the agreement signed with the International Cooperation Group of Brazilian universities, granting up to 400 postgraduate scholarships to students from our member states in Brazilian universities, not only to provide more opportunities for learning, but also recognizing, ladies and gentlemen, that ultimately, South-South cooperation is not sustainable in time if we limit it to bilateral agreements between our governments. Those are necessary, but in parallel, we must build bridges between our peoples, and student exchanges builds sustainable bridges between our peoples. And of course, regarding this particular point, ladies and gentlemen, and in particular to our member states, I highly encourage you to disseminate this information of the scholarships, as the deadline for applications is soon approaching on the 17th of June. And I believe that these opportunities must be made as visible as possible. And of course, yesterday in Nairobi, the OSCE also concluded the first consultation of civil society for the Africa region of the Congress of the Greater South. The Congress of the Greater South, mandated by the General Assembly to convene, not merely as an academic exercise, but bringing our countries, our intellectuals, our writers, our artists together to collectively define and articulate recommendations for the construction of a third way of development. Recommendations which will be the foundation upon which the summit of the Greater South will be able to articulate a concrete collective roadmap and common plan of action to be submitted for adoption by our heads of state and government. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, in order to be concise, the Organization of Southern Cooperation in the past year is not only strong institutionally thanks to the support of our host country and all member states of the organization, but is in a strong position as well of programmatic delivery, tangible delivery that goes beyond merely speeches and statements. But of course, I would be remiss in my duty if I did not mention that with delivery, the OSCE in its very DNA believes in the importance of confederating efforts. That the scope of our mandate, broad as it is, cannot be the burden of a single organization, of a single secretariat, but must be a whole of government at the national level, a whole of society at the national level, but also a whole of the international community endeavor. And of course, over the past year, having consolidated the Secretariat, a new chapter of collaborative engagements has been started since January, enhancing our exchanges and collaboration with other organizations, amongst which the accreditation of the OSCE as an observer to the United Nations Environment Assembly, the engagements that we have started quite productively with the African Union Commission, and of course in particular with SD, in terms of better responding to our common and respective member states' needs through collaborative efforts. Recent engagements as well with the Association of Caribbean States in Latin America and the Caribbean. And all of this, ladies and gentlemen, with a conviction that South-South cooperation and regional integration mutually reinforce each other. And in this sense, of course, I also take this opportunity to reiterate the invitation extended by the General Assembly to all countries of the South that are not yet members of the organization to seek membership within this family of nations, in their legitimate hope, in recognition, beyond numbers, that the more countries we are, from the more regions we are, the more experiences we can share, the more resources we can pull together, the more opportunities we can forge. Recognizing, of course, that the OSCE also in principle acts as a community of mutual learning among sovereign peers. And finally, but not the last, I remember, ladies and gentlemen, consistently a poem, at the risk of sounding fluffy, by Antonio Machado, who says, "Caminante, son tus huellas el camino y nada más. Caminante, no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Al andar se hace camino, al volver la vista atrás se ve la senda que nunca se ha de volver a pisar." Wanderer, walker, your footprints are the road and nothing else. Wanderer, walker, there is no road. The road is made by walking. By walking, the road is made, and looking back, you see the pathways upon which you will never set foot upon again. And whilst the OSCE has strongly moved in the direction of delivering on the plans adopted by the General Assembly, we are also fully aware of the importance of making the road by walking. And in this regard, one activity that has not been planned at our General Assembly, but that we are very honored to convene, although in its miniature version, and perhaps in an attempt to go beyond diplomatic engagement, but opening up our organization, our collective, to people, the general public. We are convening tomorrow, as you can see, the first edition of the Festival of the Greater South, having brought artists, poets, dancers, painters from across our countries, from Latin America and the Caribbean, from Asia, from Africa and the Arab world, having brought them here, both to celebrate, of course, this day that is OSCE Day, but most importantly, to resist two tendencies. One, which is a uniformizing process of cultures. But two, and most importantly, the approaches that folklorize our cultures as stuck in the past. But our cultures, ladies and gentlemen, in their diversity and unity, our cultures are living cultures. Because our peoples are in motion. Our cultures are rooted in their past. They are not alienated from it, but nor are they exiled from the present. And in this regard, our cultures, whilst having a memory, also change, evolve, grow, adapt, absorb diversities. And this is what we will celebrate tomorrow here as an open event for whoever would so like to accompany us. And I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you will all take the decision, if only for a few hours, to remove the ties and the work suits and come here to celebrate not just the organization of Southern Cooperation, but celebrate its essence, which is a conviction, a dream, that not only is it possible to avoid the unmaking of our world. But it is possible to remake it. And I will stop by recording or remembering, ladies and gentlemen, Albert Camus. Albert Camus, who on the 10th of December 1957, receiving the Nobel Prize of Literature, said these extraordinary words. Chaque génération, sans doute, se croit vouée à refaire le monde. La mienne, pourtant, sait qu'elle ne le refera pas. Mais sa mission est peut-être plus grande encore. Elle consiste à faire en sorte que le monde ne se défasse pas. Each generation thinks itself as having the mission, thinks itself as bound to remake the world. Mine, however, knows that it will not remake it. But its task is perhaps greater still, because it consists in making sure that the world does not unmake itself. And after 6 decades of these words, our task today is twice as complex, multiple times as challenging, and that is to have the courage to collectively unmake the systems that have led the world to the brink of unmaking itself, but at the same time, remake it for the better. And this effort, ladies and gentlemen, will only succeed through collective action and all of your proactive involvement. I had promised to be concise. I have failed. But I am grateful, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here.